Good evening. My name is Donna Pilot, and I am president of the Student Government Association. I'd like to welcome everyone for coming out tonight, and in spending some time with Dr. Yosef Ben-Jochannan, I asked him this afternoon, well, what would you like me to say about you when I give my introduction? And he replied, oh, you don't have to say anything. So I like to say, one thing I like to say is that this summer, a friend of mine had a tape of Dr. Yosef Ben-Jochannan, and he played it for me. And it literally brought tears to my eyes because so much truth was in that one tape. And at that point, I decided that the first lecturer this year would be him. I would also like to say that you're in store for a very uplifting lecture. We chose the title, Wake Up Black People, because that's what we need to do. We need to wake up. So I'd like everyone to come together with a round of applause and let's welcome Dr. Yosef Ben-Jochannan.
I would like to first express my appreciation for your invitation. It took me 50 years to get to Tuskegee. 50 years ago, at age 16, I applied for entrance to Tuskegee. My application was accepted, but the immigration laws of the United States of America were such, and I don't think they have changed much, that I couldn't get here. I remembered that such had happened to a man before me by the name of Marcus Messiah Garvey. He was invited by Booker T. Washington. I don't know if you know about him. I heard you don't have a Booker T. Washington Day, unusual. But anyhow, probably better thoughts may come about and there will be a Booker T. Washington Day at Tuskegee. But anyhow, Marcus Messiah Garvey was invited by Booker T. Washington to come to the United States. The facts are that red tapes in the immigration department, Garvey arrived 6 months subsequent to the death of the great Booker T. Washington. So taking 50 years to get here, nevertheless I got here. I do not know if I would have taken the course of action in my life that I have now taken. However, I was lucky enough to slip through an engineering course and graduate in a few more courses, and here I am. Within the context of my education, if you could call it that, I would prefer to call it the course of my indoctrination, my training, which started in Ethiopia, East Africa, and continued in Brazil, Cuba, Puerto Rico, the United States Virgin Islands, England, and Spain. Been around a few places. And in all of these places that I've been, I never once received an education in the history of African people. Yet I thought that I've educated myself down through those period of time. And it is because of that self-education in those things which meant most to me as an African person that I decided at no time would I stand still in these halls of indoctrination and not rebel with the necessary documentation of the lies that are being taught in these halls. And so I may be saying things that may hurt many of you, if not most of you, because some of the lies have become your dear frame of reference. We could start with the Greeks. I hope you of fraternities and sororities don't get too bothered about it, since the Greeks weren't too much anyhow. But we can start with that, because there is where our institutions of learning has decided to start civilization. Yet the Greeks are only here from at least 1000 before the Common Era, or before the Christian era, as you would prefer to say. Let us just, for example, cite one. And that particular person would be Hippocrates. And I'm sure that you heard of Hippocrates. And when you consider that Hippocrates wasn't born until 333 BC, or before the Common Era, yet in your education you were told that Hippocrates is the father of medicine. That's a lie. There's no way that I can say about it other than it's a lie. A lie is a lie, whether it's in the university or in the church. How could Hippocrates be the father of medicine when the first time you see him, he is in Egypt learning medicine from Africans? There are numerous papyri, medical papyri on medicine. The nearest to Hippocrates is at least 1300 years before he was born. For example, we have what is known as the Hetus papyrus, the Ebers papyrus, and now the so-called Rockefeller papyrus, the Edwin C. Smith papyrus. All of these papyri go back to as early as 3100 BC. The man who Hippocrates took an oath that he would practice medicine according to this man, this African, whom the Greeks call Aesculapius in the Hippocratic Oath, a man by the name of Imhotep, died. He practiced medicine and died 2,500 years before the birth of Hippocrates. And you are telling me that the medical school and the pre-medical historians don't know this? They don't know it because, unfortunately, Imhotep had a high visibility like myself, otherwise called black. They don't know that the Ebers papyrus by Hatshepsut, dealing with Planned Parenthood, I said Planned Parenthood, 1,550 years before the birth of Jesus the Christ, is out there, when every medical journal in 1961 published copies of the Ebers papyrus. And we could go on with the papyri with respect to all kinds of diseases that the Africans had produced, both in Egypt and Ethiopia and Sudan, and a place then called Puanit, now called Somalia. But that would be satisfactory. But let us take the kind of education that we do have we are in a chapel, and we have been told about an immaculate conception and virgin birth. We have been told about the beginning of the world with Adam and Eve. We have been told about a man by the name of Cain who slew his brother Abel. And we have been told that all of these things only happen once. And they go back to the Old Testament, or otherwise called the Torah, or the Pentateuch, or the Chumash. Those are names for what you call the Old Testament. But we have never been told that they are only copies of stories that predated them by thousands of years. Let's put them one by one. I heard some hymns and everything already. Oh yes, you have been told a lot of lies. No other way to talk about it. And those who teach them, if in fact they did any research, must know they are lies. That is providing that they have never gone to Egypt or to Ethiopia or to Sudan to see the living proof. The writings on the tombs, the writings in the pyramids, what is called the pyramid text and the coffin text. That is providing that they have not seen the holy scriptures of the Africans of the Nile Valley, otherwise called the Egyptian Book of the Dead, or as Budge called it in his translation of the hieratic writing, or the Egyptian Book of the Coming Forth by Day and by Night. In the temple of Setaiwan, for example, at a place called Abydos, not only is there the writings of an immaculate conception 4,000 years before the story of Mary, but it is there in picture form. Are we to say that the theologians of Judaism, Christianity, and Islam have never once taken a trip to Egypt, from whence these things were taken? In that same temple, you see a story of how Set-Typhon murdered his brother Osiris 2,000 years before the Jewish story of Cain and Abel. And we are told that an African from Egypt by the name of Moses, born in the city of Goshen, that's still Egypt. Egypt is in Africa, by the way, the last time I saw it in January. You heard of a place called Middle East. I don't know of any place called Middle East. That's political jingoism. But we can find that there was no Moses on Mount Horeb in the Sinai to receive any 10 commandments that had not been given before or written before in Egypt, because you could go in the book of the Coming Forth by Day and by Night, the Book of the Dead, and see in what is called the Osirian drama, not only those 10, but 32 more, a total of 42, which you can also go in the temple of Ramesses VI, in the Valley of the Kings, across what is today called Luxor. And in that tomb, you would see the 42 listed commandments, or otherwise negative confession, 2,000 years before the birth of Moses. But they told you that Moses was taught. He was an Egyptian, taught in school in Egypt, and became a priest in the system. Could you have been born in the United States of America, went to kindergarten, then elementary school, junior high school, and never heard of the United States Constitution? It was equally impossible for Moses to have born in Egypt, go to school in Egypt, study an Egyptian system, worship God Amun-Ra, and never once heard of the 42 negative confession, which have in it, thou shalt not kill. I have not killed man nor woman. I have not made like thy bushel. I have not. Moses himself is charged with murder. His brother Aaron is charged with theft. 40 years before they reached Mount Sinai, then somebody had a law against theft and against murder before he reached Mount Sinai. Where did they get it? But you weren't taught anything about this. All of this information have been suppressed at a place called the Council of Jamia and the Council of Nicene in 325 AD, when Constantine, the Roman emperor, conquered North Africa, took over the role of the Christian church, which started in Alexandria with Pantheus and Boethius, not in Rome. But this too you have not been taught. You have not been taught that the three people who died first in the name of Jesus the Christ were three African women: Felicita, Nymphano, and Perpetua. Yet you know everything. You're born again. You know it all. You can't be blamed for it. Even your teachers may not be able to be blamed for this, because one can't teach what one doesn't know, or one have not learned, or one have not experienced, because there is no interest for people to go to Egypt to see anything, but to go to the Holy Land. And that's why Jesse is tied and had to get on his knees and pray and beg forgiveness. He was scared he wouldn't be able to get back in the Holy Land for saying what was right. But there's more than that. Because you have been told that unless Europeans teach you, you haven't been taught. But who told you that the first university built in all of Europe was built by Africans called Moors? At the university, what is called the University of Salamanca in Spain. Check it out. Europe's first university. Not only the stones were put together like the stones in most of the building and the bricks in most of the building here. I'm not talking about that aspect of only the building. I'm talking about the educational system is nothing but a copy of the University of Djenne, D-J-E-N-N-E, of ancient Ghana, which was burnt down and rebuilt as the University of Sankore in the city of Tumbat, which the French later called Timbuktu. Then carried, as the Africans called Moors, conquered Iberia, now Spain and Portugal and southern France, and established in there the university system. And as I said before, it was not the first. The earliest of the Greeks were trained in a place called the subordinate lodge of Croton and Delphi. Subordinate lodges of the Grand Lodge in a place called Waset, which the Greeks later changed to Thebes or Thebes. The current Arabs changed it to Luxor. But did you get that in Greek philosophy? Did you get it in Greek history or European history? None whatsoever. And how did you get Hannibal Barca and his father Hasdrubal Barca and his brother and his father, rather, Hamilcar, his brother Hasdrubal? How did you receive it in the educational system? How did the textbook show it? It showed it as they were not Africans. What they said is some Phoenicians came from Phoenicia, and Carthage, which they later called Carthage, was in fact a Phoenician country. 80 people came from Phoenicia with a woman named Elisa, which Virgil called Dido or Dido in his little play about it. And those 80 changed all the Africans into Phoenicians. And thus we are taught that the Africans of Carthagena were in fact Caucasians. It's all right when they taught me in school in Puerto Rico, I didn't know any difference. I'm born in Ethiopia, grew up in Puerto Rico and the Virgin Islands and Cuba and Brazil. So when they were teaching me that at the University of Puerto Rico, I knew no difference, and so it went down all right. But I accidentally went to Morocco, accidentally, and find that what I had been taught in school was nothing but a pack of lies. Because I then went into the temple, I then went into the museum and found that it was totally different. But then I went on to Italy, in the Medici Museum, the Museum of Alessandro de' Medici, only to find that Alessandro was an African born in Italy. And no one had told me up to then that there were Roman emperors from Africa, such as Honorius and Septimus Severus and his son Caracalla. No one had taken time to explain to me anything about the Greeks coming to Egypt and to Nubia and to Ethiopia, depending on who they were, to receive their earliest education, those who had not gone to a little colony, a little enclave in what was then called Lebus, now called Libya, to receive their first glimpse into education taught by Africans. Well, having gone the route of civil engineering and with a bachelor's and then master's in architectural engineering, you would think that I should be satisfied at that point. But I couldn't be satisfied because the fire had burnt. You see, I was the admirer of two particular people at that time. One called Booker T. Washington and one called Marcus Garvey. In the reverse, Garvey first and then Washington. Garvey because in my household, Garvey was the word next to the deity. And the relationship between Garvey and Booker T had become so close that I too followed the teachings and philosophical concept of the late Honorable Booker T. Washington. But within that philosophy was something else both men always taught: the integrity of the individual. And the integrity of the individual refused, in my case, to accept lies, such as Benny Goodman is the king of swing, and Duke Ellington must have been the emperor of swing. Chick Webb, having taught Gene Krupa, I was told that Gene Krupa is the best on the drum, but he went to Chick Webb to get to be the best on the drum. I don't know if you know Chick Webb, you know Ella Fitzgerald. Chick taught her. I just throw that in to show you that the lie doesn't stop in ancient time. It continues up to today as truth. And so in my further examination, I was dealing with 3.14. All of you here in engineering knows what it's supposed to symbolize. They say it's pi. And I was taught that it came from the Greeks. And you know, I believed it. What else could I do? The teacher told me. And then when I went to Ethiopia and to Egypt and to Nubia, in the ancient records of the ancient Africans of the Nile Valley Africans, there was pi being used 2,000 years before there was such a place as Greece. The first writer of Greece that brought Greece into civilization, because they said the demarcation between uncivilized and civilized have to do with the time when you start writing history, they call it, prehistoric and historic. And Homer is the Greek first writer. And Homer said that even the concept of God. Zeus and Apollo came from Ethiopia. So when you get in the Greek fraternities and sororities, just remember what Homer said. You must have dealt with the Iliad and the Odyssey by now. But again, I understand. You see, you have been taught by Alex Haley and others that your history started in the slave trade. But they don't even tell you how the slave trade started. They blame you for enslaving yourself. They say your ancestors sold you out. Nice statement. So I asked the guy, what country, what was the name of the king? Oh, don't worry about that, they sold you out. As if I don't know that the slave trade started with the Pope of the Roman Catholic Church by the name of Martin V. And Reverend Bartolomeo de las Casas on the island of Hispaniola, now called Haiti and Santo Domingo. You see, nobody told you it's time to get sorry, to feel bad when some Haitians were being slaughtered on the coast of Florida. That's what it is. If you send a people back to sea on the condition where they were, that's genocide. But you see, you didn't feel anything because you weren't taught to realize that the Haitians are your brothers and sisters, because you don't know that the first Africans to be brought in slavery was not taken from Africa, but from Spain and carried to Haiti, then called Hispaniola, in 1506, under the aegis of the Pope of the Roman Church and Bartolomeo de las Casas. But how did you get in Spain? That was 1506. But you went into Spain, which was then called Iberia, Spain and Portugal and southern France, as conquerors yourself in 711, under the leadership of Tariq, for whom the Rock of Gibraltar is now named Gibraltariq. Nothing in your education, because there's nothing in your textbooks about any of this. So you'll have to go to Spain. Luckily, at the University of Barcelona, where I attended for 2 years, there are these documents, and I had never known anything about them. I hadn't known that the Africans called Moors had ruled Spain from 711 until 1485. The last of them losing power at a place called Granada. I was always wondering, why is it that 90% of all the songs coming out of Spain was singing to La Morena, the black woman? So how come in this country 90% of all the songs, the records, the tapes, everything is La Morena this and La Morena that? It is when I went there I found out La Morena raised hell in Spain. She's still raising hell in Montgomery, Alabama, and in Tuskegee, Alabama, and in Tuskegee Institute. I could look around and see her. Of course, the first one of you threw a good baseball and a good basketball, forget that she could raise hell. You don't want her for a wife anymore. You hit the numbers, you don't want her for a wife. Some of you forget you look like your mama. Sorry, fellows. Try one, it may be good for your health. But we must go back and ask ourselves, why is this so? And I said to the students today at the high school, even the paper you write on shows your heritage and your history. It was in Egypt, Ethiopian Sudan, that the first papyrus paper was created, not rice paper in China. Just as it was in Egypt that engineering, Sesostris II, you are engineers, many of you, Sesostris II changed the flow of the Nile. That S-turn you see there was placed there by African engineers in 2250 BC. There was no Jesus yet, no Adam and Eve story yet, because that came out of the Sanhedrin in 700 BC, just yesterday, when the African engineers was changing the flow of the Nile. Hydrographic engineering, there was no Adam, no Eve yet, no Jehovah, because Abraham, the first Jew that brought out the concept of a Jehovah, wasn't even born. The Africans had already worshipped Ptah, P-T-A-H, Amin-Ra. You still say Amin at the end of each prayer, and they told you it means so be it. That's a lie. Ammon was the god of the north. When Scorpio, the pharaoh, headed the north and Egypt was divided into two groups, it had gone into a civil war. And Mena, or Nama, was the king of the south, and his god was Ra. The conquest of Mena over Scorpion allowed Mena to join God Amen with God Ra and call Amen Ra, thousands of years before there was a Jehovah, Jesus, or Allah. Muhammad ibn Abdullah wasn't born until 570 of the Christian era. Pontius and Boetius, that started Christianity, wasn't born until 50 AD. According to the story. And Abraham, who started the concept of a God named Jehovah and Adam and Eve's story, wasn't born until 1760 BC. The Africans of Egypt and Ethiopia and Nubia were already in their 13th dynastic period. No different than the lie they told us that the Jews built the pyramids. Which one? The little one in their bathtub? There are 72 pyramids throughout Egypt. The first one was designed, engineered, and built by the multi-genius, first one known in the world, Imhotep. That was the third dynasty. The last one was the sixth dynasty, and the first Jew wasn't born until the 13th dynasty. You can't build a pyramid before you're born. But the myth and the lie continues. Now they're even making people from outer space build the pyramids from the top down. Those of you who are engineering knows how they build it from the top down. They took the first stone with some skyhook and connected to the cloud passing by. I'm not supposed to speak about these things. Oh, I'm supposed to be glad somebody give me a piece of goat skin with a thing on it that said PhD twice. And I'm supposed to be so good. I got one of the goat skin, PhD, all in Latin. Feel good, ain't it? Different person. My mother isn't my mother anymore. My father isn't my father anymore. Black folks are not related to me anymore. I'm Greek, Dutch, Japanese, whatever else. I am Rainbow Coalition now. I don't talk to my cousin anymore. They can't sit at my table at the college anymore because I'm Abba Dabba Labba Labba fraternity. Oh, the things we go through. All to keep us from the Pan-African concept. You know, when I heard that in, I think it was Selma, Alabama, or Montgomery, that 6 little black girls were blown up. I heard you vote for the guy the other day. Blown up in a little temple, a little Baptist temple. Tears ran down my eyes. Because my girls, I got 9, were blown up. When theirs were blown up. When they were blown up, mine, it was my children blew up. How could I sit in my living room in New York and felt comfortable knowing? You see, people don't want me to feel. If you kill one European Jew in Ushkush because he is Jewish, the whole white Jewish community get in arms. But if you kill umpteen blacks, I am not supposed to say anything, otherwise I'm being racist. You see, they didn't tell you that there are black people who are Jews. So you say blacks and Jews are going to have a conference. Couldn't be blacks Jews too? Or you never heard of the Falashas, the Ethiopian Jews? I'm one. I know that I don't look Jewish, but they don't look Jewish to me either. But this, you see, is rough stuff. Because I'm dealing with things that you are not supposed to hear or deal with. Tomorrow there's going to be a question and answer period, and all who don't agree with it could ask their question and make their comment. They shouldn't wait till tomorrow when I'm gone and sneakily run and tell you, I knew better. They are called the Falashas, but you didn't hear anyone saying anything in America when the Italian fascists were exterminating the Falashas. Nobody said anything. And it was the forerunner to what Hitler was to come and do next. But there was no rallying cry about my people. We were 5 million when Hitler arrived, Mussolini arrived. With the help of the Pope, Pius XI, I think it was. When the Italians left, we were 50,000. But no cry. Isn't it strange that when you write and when you are taught, you hear only about a Holocaust? One. What happened to your Holocaust that's still going on? What happened to the 50 million Africans, your brothers and sisters, that were murdered in Munamatapa, now called South Africa, under Cecil John Rhodes? Do you know that black folks take scholarship in honor of John Rhodes, Cecil John Rhodes? Because you don't know. Nobody told you who Rhodes was. Rhodes make Hitler look like a playboy. You don't know about the Holocaust with Frederick Lugard and Dr. Jameson in what is today called Nigeria, with Goldie and others when they took over the colony. You don't know about the Holocaust with Leopold II, the Vanderbilts and the Pews and the others, the Rockefellers and so forth, when they took over what was called Manicongo in those days and changed it to the Congo Free State. How many millions? 22 million were exterminated. African women pregnant were placed in the middle of roads, and 3 limbs put to both arms, and then cut with the horses and split them open, and the babies fell out as punishment that the men would see it. These are records. They themselves wrote, not realizing that Africans will come later to revenge these causes. But that isn't mentioned as Holocaust in any of your textbooks, because it was only Africans being exterminated. I don't expect enemies to say this, but I do expect that when you write and when you do your research that you use the appropriate term, genocide, Holocaust, wherever it applies. In Tasmania, an island off Australia, every last African was murdered. There isn't one left. And you don't call it a Holocaust. And you don't cry about it. You don't get up any day complaining. Nobody comes to you and asks you, but you cry for everybody else's Holocaust. Because you weren't taught that these people had anything at all to do with you. You forget that the slave boat did not come from Africa to America. It came from Africa to the Caribbean, from the Caribbean to America. The first boat that brought Africans here were not from Africa, but from Barbados. The first that came to Virginia in 1619 in Jamestown. So you weren't told that there's any connection. As a matter of fact, the people from Alabama don't feel anything for the people of New Jersey, and the people of New Jersey don't feel anything for the people of Mississippi, etc., etc. We have not been taught that way. Thus, we couldn't even have with Jesse an African drive for an African people. In the midst of the drive, we had to change to rainbow. And you stood here and got on your knees and begged for a holiday for Dr. King. You disgraced Dr. King. The enemy never award his foe with a holiday. The Italians got a day for a man that got lost, couldn't find his way. Columbus Day. They didn't go to anybody for the holiday. The Irish got a day for a man that killed snakes in Ireland. They didn't go to anybody for a holiday. The Poles got a day for Pulaski. They didn't go and beg a day. Why didn't you take a day? You had to go beg for even a day to worship a great man. But you failed to understand that King did not operate alone. There was a man at the same time named Malcolm X. And somebody told you that Malcolm X preached violence. How the hell you think you got here? By nonviolence? How you think you got lynched? And how you think King died? By a bullet like Malcolm X. Malcolm left a woman named Betty with 6 daughters, 2 in her stomach when he died. They've never seen their daddy. King left a woman with 3 children too. What is it about one struggling for you that isn't about the other struggling for you? You'd let people decide for you who fights for you. What made Malcolm less a fighter for you than King? They both died fighting in the best way they knew for their people. None worse or none better than the other. But worst of all, you have not one day cried for Rosa Parks. And that sister started all. Just give them black sisters a chance. They will show us brothers the way. Because you see, they know that when the Africans were built, made their first calendar in 10,000 BC, 10,000 BC, called the stellar calendar, and revised that in 4100 BC, the so-called pre-dynastic era. Where was Greece? Where was Etrusca, that later became Rome? They don't tell you about this, do they? They don't tell you anything about this aspect of the African, because it's not slavery. It doesn't deal with Amos and Andy. It doesn't deal with roots and novel, which they got you to believe had something to do with your history. They couldn't do this because they did not. Where were they when you were dealing with astronomy? That's the movement of the stars and the other planets related thereto. and astrology. I'm not talking no nonsense about when your girlfriend planet is down in Pluto and something. That's ignorance. Downright premeditated ignorance. Even a jackass wouldn't follow that. And some of you wouldn't come out the house unless you read the horoscope. And you get courses in it in universities now. How to be a jackass. Let us get it down. When Imhotep and others established the pyramid text and the Khafre text, when you go to a place called Aswan and you see how the Africans, your ancestors, dug those marble obelisks. And when you go, you always they tell you in school, and they read the beautiful love story about the Majahara who built his palace for his most beloved wife, the Taj Mahal. They didn't stop to tell you that thousands of years before that, a pharaoh by the name of Ramesses II not only built a temple out of hewn rock bigger than this place, along with one for his most beautiful and most precious wife, Nefertara. Don't mix her up with Nefertiti. Nefertiti was the wife of Amenhotep IV, who changed his name to Akhenaten. That's the 18th dynasty. I am talking about Nefertara, the wife of Ramesses II. That is the 19th dynasty. No mention about that, because they can't tell you African men did anything good for African women, much less to mention pharaohs and queens. Yet the evidence is still there. You go to Ethiopia at a place called Lalibela, and you see the rock-hewn temples, the rock-hewn churches in the side of mountain, down in the ground, engineering thousands of years before any country existed in all of Europe. I'm not to speak about it. All I say to you is check me out. Check these things out for yourself. Go and see them, read about them, research about them. So when why? What happened? You say, why do I need to know it? If Dr. Martin Luther King knew what I'm talking about, he would not have gone to Mohandas Karamchand Gandhi to learn about nonviolence. He would have known that Gandhi read the works of Akhenaten to learn about, and he would have gone home to his native Africa to get first-hand information. But they kept the teachings from in all the university, even when he went to University of Massachusetts, BU rather, with Dr. Harmon and others up there. They didn't tell him about Akhenaten, because you see, they don't talk about Akhenaten because Akhenaten taught about monotheism. He died before Moses was born, preaching monotheism, the worship of the god Aten, A-T-E-N. He taught about the Trinity of God, and you could go at a temple called the Temple of Luxor and see on the wall the Trinitarian concept 3,000 years before Jesus, Mary, and Joseph. But they couldn't teach Akhenaten. They couldn't teach these things, because then you would question what is being taught to you now in theosophy, in theology, in philosophy. But the point is that I'm going to be the bad fellow when this is over. And you're going to be told that he is the Antichrist. But the funny thing is, I don't have 3 names with 6 letters each. So I can't qualify for the Antichrist. They already specify how the Antichrist would come. And I look too much like Jesus to be the Antichrist. Oh yeah! What happened to Jesus since he got blunt? When ask your professor of theology how Jesus got blunt. Ask your professor if it was not until Michelangelo was commissioned by Pope Julius II in 1509 to draw what he believed the Holy Family looked like, that he took his uncle's son, and his uncle's wife and used them as the model, and that became Mary, Jesus, and Joseph. Up until that time, it was the black Madonna and Child, which the present Pope went back twice to his native, to worship at the feet of the black Madonna and Child. You see, the racism hadn't hit Europe yet. So it wasn't necessary to get rid of the black color of Mary, which you now say. When you don't want to say Jesus was black, you say he had no color. If he had no color, how did John the Baptist see him to baptize him? Talking about baptismal, you should go to the temples there and see baptism of the pharaohs thousands of years before Jesus. They call it purification rites. Go and see circumcisions thousands of years before there was an Abraham to be circumcised, and that to make him a Jew. Our education, quotation mark. I think that Carter G. Woodson, and I should have mentioned this man's name long ago, said it best in his book. The title explains what I'm saying: The Miseducation of the Negro. Assuming that Carter knew at that time that Negro was wrong, but he had no choice because he was fired from Howard University by a man named Mordecai Kaplan, who was the president of the school at the time, for attempting to introduce a course in African history in a black school. Sad, isn't it? But how we can be messed up, and we mess up others because we messed up. But we can't admit it because we can't be wrong. We have to always have a theory and tell the student it's a fact for all things. It's like the other day I heard a woman talking, oh God, my daughter got an illegitimate child. So what happened to the child? You didn't have a law book? Illegitimate child. And I wanted to know what was that. So I went to the hospital to see what was wrong with the child. I said, did the child got a mother and a father? They had sex with a penis and a vagina? What's wrong with the child? Well, she didn't have a marriage certificate. I said, what that have to do with child? Do you know that Jesus and Mary and Joseph wasn't married? And that she wasn't married to the little angel either? But you go around calling each other bastard and illegitimate. How you know you belong to your daddy? You're gambling with your mama. But you go around and then say, oh, I'm a good Christian lady, I'm a good Jewish lady, I'm a good Muslim lady, but you condemn a child for having a daddy and without a paper from City Hall. In those days, tell me, with your Adam and Eve story, the God didn't say, go to City Hall, get a paper, get married, then go out and multiply. God says in the book of Genesis, after he made a man and a woman, it's only the second time he's going to create one and make the other. He says, go out and get it now. Go out and multiply. That doesn't mean that you act like a pig in a basket and dropping everything you got. That doesn't say that. But it doesn't also say that if God give a woman a vagina and a man a penis, why do you think God gave them that? To use it. Where they gonna put it in a picture frame and look at it? But this is the kind of distortion that you have been given by the same man who asks you to give him 10% of your salary every Saturday, every Sunday. Oh, I'm going to hell. That's no big deal. Because they said only 777,000 going to heaven. How many people in the United States of America? 220 million? If 777,000 alone going to heaven, you got as much chance hitting the grand prize in New York, in New Jersey, in California, in London, in France, as you got getting in heaven. So I'm sticking with the devil. Because since he got more followers than anybody else, you don't hear the devil having to advertise, come to church. Because he got what's going. Because you pray so much. The other day you pray, Jesus came here in Harlem the other day with his heaven mobile. In the middle of Harlem. Coming down Lenox Avenue at 145th Street, 11 o'clock Sunday. Jesus knew he had brought all the things black people were asking for. The heaven mobile was full, even much more full than Santa Claus's chariot. 11 o'clock when the bell rang, the first thing Jesus heard, give me. He says, oh hell, I didn't bring enough, and he went right back. Because they were still begging, give me a fur coat, Lord. Give me a new Cadillac. Give me a European girl. Give me a job. The same people forget that the same book said, I will help those who help themselves. You pray for the exam. Pray. Don't do it. Pray. Let me know when you flunk out. There is a certain amount of pray. You say, do you pray? Yeah. I pray when I get in the airplane. I pray now. I don't have to go to the church to pray. You know what I'm praying about? Strength to beat my enemy. I don't want God to give me no TV set. I'm working, get that. I pray for God to hold the moon from bumping into the sun. That's all I want God to do. Stop an iceberg from falling my head in Alabama. That's a long way the iceberg got to travel. But I don't want the iceberg leave Alaska, because if the iceberg hit me in Alabama, we all dead. But I'm not going to pray for God to help me to beat my enemy. I don't do that myself. And I'm not non-violent. When my mother had me, she didn't have me non-violent. A 9-pound baby don't come out non-violent. You hit me and start praying. You pray. Because it's not natural. Because I know this. You see, when King Uri of Ethiopia in 5100 established the concept of nonviolence, he didn't say at any cost. When Akhenaten brought his cousin Semenkari and sit him on the throne of Egypt as co-regent in the 18th dynasty so that he could pay attention to nonviolence, he didn't say at any cost. Not at the destruction of his people. When Rosa Parks got up in that bus, she had no PhD, no M anything, no B anything, but she had the integrity of an African woman, that she was no longer going to sit down in the back of the bus, and she was willing to die and take somebody with her. I know these are alien talks. These are alien thoughts because you believe that praying can change it. No way. Praying didn't change lynching because it still goes on. Instead of a Ku Klux Klan doing it, the government does it. But most of us in our academic role don't want to deal with this thing, and I can understand because it means the difference between tenure, the bank mortgage, the yacht in the basin, the Mercedes-Benz. And winding down for the question and answer period, and I hope to be a very jolly one. I'm not going anywhere till tomorrow. And I'm sorry about that, but I have to teach at Malcolm King College. I teach there now voluntarily for the last 20 years. I taught a course. I've been teaching a course on Egyptology as my contribution to my community. And I don't like to miss classes. But you could see why from 1942, when I was started to teach, to the present time, I've had to struggle. I've paid the price. I've been shot at physically for what I teach, but no one wants to check the evidence. But the hundreds of people who have gone to me to Egypt and study tours have seen. And the sad part is that so many go and see, but they dare not say a thing when they come back for the fear of losing even family. How sad that is. How sad it is that people will be angry because I say to you, have pride, wake up. I shouldn't say to you, wake up black men. I should say to you, wake up people. I'm the only people in the world. We are not allowed to talk to each other for our own common interest. Everyone else. The Italians come together as Italians, the Irish as Irish, the white Jews as white Jews. But we are told we can't have anything by ourselves because it's reverse racism. They can't even let us have forward racism. We're in reverse. Everybody else is benefited by us, but us. And all because I have made my mind that my people aren't to be taught that they come out of drop out of the sky as slaves and were slaves. And every time you see a movie from Washington, D.C. or anything, whatever the period, the only time you see us, we are slaves. I remember going to the opera. I don't go to that place unless somebody give me a ticket. Because they ain't got nothing but me, the flater mouse. What the hell I want to see but a flater mouse? Little mouse running around in German. So I went to one that's supposed to be about me. About Dido. Verdi's play. This is happening in Egypt and Ethiopia, and I'm sitting down in a $22 seat. You know, I didn't buy that one. And it is about the princess of Egypt and the prince of Ethiopia, and I'm looking at the stage, and the prince is blonde, and the princess blonder yet. And I'm saying, like simple for Langston Hughes, you know, I'm dummy. When will the Ethiopian and the Egyptian come? And the person who gave me the ticket, there they are. I said, there. They look Greek to me, look French, Dutch, German. And the brother said, you prejudiced? I said, yeah. Behind that I am. You mean to tell me that that's a blonde Ethiopian? And that's a blonde Egyptian? But you see, you would have been satisfied. You would call it art for art's sake. Not me. It was no damn good. Because Ethiopians don't look like that. And I wasn't going to sit down there and lie to myself that that had any value. When you had Martina Arroyo, you had Leontine Price, You had all kinds of people they could have put in that place. But the Metropolitan Opera House wasn't ready yet for Leontine Price, no Martino Arujo or anybody else. And until they were ready, I was going to give them hell till they get ready and made them get ready. Because I'm not going to sit down any time behind, and now I don't need it to do anymore. I retired from teaching in colleges, and I wasn't doing it then. I wasn't sitting quiet then. And I'm not going to sit quiet now when I don't have to worry anyhow. Didn't worry then. To bring the truth to my people. And time doesn't permit. I have to go here, there, and everything to just show you the culmination of history. History isn't a thing of the past. Because of history, you act and react today. History is now. What happened yesterday make you act today and will make you act tomorrow. What happened to Booker T. Washington made what you are doing possible. The interaction of the people with whom Booker T. dealt with. And so it will be unbecoming you not to go forward and further the attributes of Booker T. and Dr. Carver and others. You can't fail. You can't come to this institution and nonchalantly take courses and hope to pass. You have an obligation to pass and pass well. Not only to read the books in front of you, but to read others. Certainly if you're taking engineering or science or something like that, you need a lot of time, but you can't ignore self. The understanding, the knowledge of self. You can't come through here and don't take courses in African history or African American history. You can't do it. Some of you believe because you're black you know yourself. Go check it out. You get your European history, you must take that to graduate. 101, 201, umpteen one. But take yours at least on your own initiative. Learn who you were. Learn who you are. Learn what you must be. And I say, I walked with my head in the clouds because I have no fear. I have no embarrassment of my enslavement because you see, the shackles have been off my body, my leg, my feet, and I've removed it from the last place, my mind. And thus I am a free man. When I look in the mirror, I feel proud of what I see. I don't need reefer. I don't snort. I don't stick nothing in my arms because I'm already high. High with the beauty of the woman that gave birth to me. Somebody else the other day asked me, do you know God? I said, yes, she died 14 years ago. What do you mean? I said, Mama, dear Mama, the first time I opened my eye, there was a black woman putting a nipple from a breast in my mouth to sustain me, having sustained me for 10 months in her womb, not 9. That's the sign. That was God, the God I knew. The other one is belief. Belief, and belief isn't fact. Belief is a hope. Belief is faith. Belief may not happen, but Mama did get me. And so whoever Papa did was, the man she pointed out to me that stood there is also part of that. Thus Mama, God, Mama, Daddy, and I are the Trinity, the Holy Trinity. Dig it out, check it out here. They haven't made people from dirt in a long time. They make them from sexual intercourse. Little fellow called spermatozoa. You ever heard of him? He runs up a little alley called fallopian tube. And he runs into a little thing called ovum. He jumps in, take a seat. She gobbles him up, fertilizes him, and whoop comes the weevil. He jumps out. Here my boy, here my girl, here I'm something else. But nevertheless, you could see they're not going to invite me back to Tuskegee. But it took me 50 years to get it over. I want to thank the student government, the body of the school as a whole, those in administration who made the possibility of the AFA, etc., and for those who have been so nice making the day the most comfortable one since I've arrived. I hope that the monologue so far, hope it will be a dialogue as soon as I finish, would cause you to at least do some more thinking. Don't accept what I say. Check it out. Read books about yourself. There are millions of them. Let no one tell you to the contrary. Read all kinds of religious dogmas and theories. Don't let anyone tell you this is it and there's no more. Read it all. Read mine. If you could read Mein Kampf, you could read anybody's Holy Bible. The Hindu Bhagavad Gita, the Muslim Quran, the Christian Holy Bible, New Testament, the Jewish Old Testament, the book of Ulamari, the teachings of Ulamari, that's the Yoruba religion, the teachings of Dambala Wedo, the teachings of Budum, and by the way, it has nothing to do with witchcraft. The teachings of Ngai, the major god in Kenya, Unkulunkulu of South Africa, Ra, Ptah, Osiris, the god of resurrection. 4,000 years before Jesus, he was taught to raise men from the dead. He's known as the god of resurrection. Read, read, read. Read about your people in the past, the present, the future. Understand Du Bois as you understood Garvey. Understand Malcolm as you understood King. Understand these men. Understand Sojourner Truth as you understand Harriet Tubman. Go back into the past and read about your most beautiful and your most strong queen like Hatshepsut, who fought and drove out the Hyksos out of Egypt. And Zingha, who fought for 13 years ahead of her troops, defeating the Germans and the British and others before she died on the battlefield. Queen Kahina, who stopped the Arabs in North Africa and died at the head of her troops. These are great and glorious African women. Read about the African woman who took the guts of a pig, took out the feast, clean it out, wash it out, cook it so her man could get a little protein and her children. Call it chitlin or crimple steak, either way you want. The African woman who had sense enough to send her daughter to school when her man-child had to go in the workforce from before sunup to after sundown. Show me how you treat your woman, and I show you the condition of your race. Thank you.
Before you leave, we will now have questions and answers. Those who have questions, you can come and speak into the mic. Kenny, would you hold up your hand?
As we're preparing for our question and answer session, let's give Dr. Ben another hand.
Let's start. Thank you for coming and speaking to us. To hear such a positive message and point us in the right direction. My question is, did our ancestors use the swastika before Hitler? And if so, what did it represent and how was it used?
What Hitler called the swastika was originally called the Gramadon, Gramadon. You will see Gramadons at the bottom sole of Buddha in Buddhist temples. You will see it in South America used with respect to Coatepalca, the crucified god of the Mexicans, at the time when Mexico was called Azteca. You would also see it all over Egypt, Ethiopia, and Sudan. It goes back to about 1400 BC in the Nile Valley, and it was used as a symbol of peace. What Hitler did was to adopt it. The Germans under Kaiser Wilhelm and Otto von Bismarck captured what was then Togo. At a time when the other European powers and Great Britain, with the help of the United States, was conquering all of Africa, from 1830, when France invaded Ceuta, to 1884, when they took almost all of the lands on the coast and gave Congo to Leopold II. It was then, when Germany was fighting France for Alsace-Lorraine, that the Germans realized that they weren't getting part of the action, went into Togo, took over Togo, and it is then that they adopted the eagle, the iron eagle, by the patron saint of Germany, an African by the name of Maurice, which they call Maurice of Aragon, along with the symbol that Maurice used as the bishop. You would notice, if you go to the Museum of Natural History in New York, you would see a Togolese garment from the 14th century with the Gramadon and the Iron Cross and the eagle, which the German adopted from their colonial underlings, the Togolese, and that's where it came from.
Yes. How did the mystery systems contribute to the development of Western Freemason?
Well, what was called the mystery system, which is the educational system of the Nile Valley, centered at the Grand Lodge of Waset, which is now called Luxor by the Arabs, is that every discipline, a child went in at age 7, a young boy, and he was not completed with education until age 47. He never left. It took 40 years to train an educated man who left with the title priest. So within that 40 years, he learned everything there was. And as such, he even influenced the Pharaoh, because he decided most of the things the Pharaoh had to do. Thus, engineering, law, medicine, science, mathematics, everything was done and taught in the mystery system. And those students coming out of the mystery system were sent around the nation to be the teachers. So the mystery system was the educational system of the entire Nile Valley. Not only Egypt. Egypt became the zenith of what took place, the high cultures along the Nile. And so that's how the mystery system. Now, in order, like any society, there are a group of elite within the educational system. And they became the elite. Thus, it was necessary for them to have, quote-unquote, passwords and so forth, to maintain secrets amongst each other. Because education, believe it or not, is not for the masses. You must know it. The masses can't afford $1,300 a semester. Education is for elite few. It have always been. That's reality. You know, we want things to be, and so we say it is. But the reality is that count the amount of blacks who come to college, and you will see it is for select few. And so in those ancient days, it was yet for a select few, because very few people could read and write. And those who went to the mystery system became the intellectuals of their day. It helped because if you know all the disciplines, then you could bet. Then you don't talk about mystery. For example, my oldest girl is a physician, and when she was taking her exam in surgery, I was invited to come in the theater and look down from the gallery to see her perform. And while others were doing their open heart surgery work for grades, I sat beside my daughter, and when they started to take the heart out of the patient, I said, what a miracle. And my daughter said to me, Daddy, I'm surprised at you saying that. There ain't no miracle, he just made a mistake. I said, what are you talking about? She said, Daddy, you know, and you told me, what one man knows that the other doesn't know is no longer a miracle. It is the miracle to the man who doesn't know it. But to the person who knows it, it's just routine. It's no miracle. She was right, because I taught her that. So it's no mystery. It's a mystery only to the person who doesn't know it, but it isn't to one who performs it. So that's what it did. It teaches man. And the women had their own organization, by the way, sisters, because you must say, why, how come the little boys only? There were women organization, and one of the reasons for that is that a man had to testify. One of since at age 7, all the boys were circumcised. They also had to testify. A woman cannot testify, even in the Christian church. Look in your dictionary for the word testis and testify and see where the word testify come from. To testify, a man had to hold his penis out in his left hand, raise his right hand, and swear if he told the truth, told a lie, may God unman him. You can't unman a woman if she got a testis. Kind of funny. So when women are testifying in these sacred churches, just tell them you're doing miracles.
Yes, sir.
Yes.
On self-education, and speaking to college students, I want you to say, first, a main objective of telling college students on how to relate self-education to university training and education together.
No, self-education doesn't necessarily mean that you don't go to the university. Self-education is saying, along with the prescribed courses at the university, you have to do a certain amount of self-education. You have to take a certain amount of interest in yourself and as such study about yourself. The professors can do but so much for any of us. Much of it is going to have, first of all, your education doesn't take place in 4 walls of a university. Your training takes place there. Your education is going to come on the outside when you start to apply your training and acquire experience. It is said commonly, the center of education, and of course we believe that we've got that. What we have fed is a series of facts or a series of evidence, and then we take these evidence and regurgitate the answer to those evidence. But when you go outside and you get your experience, it is really then that your education starts. So to self-education, I meant that kind of education which you found in Harriet Tubman and Sojourner Truth and others. But don't stop your training in the college just for the self-education. I wouldn't do that. I wouldn't have done it for myself, and I wouldn't encourage anyone to do that. I take all ends. I read everything and that I could get my hand on. I don't care. If the Ku Klux Klan is passing out some literature in the morning, I'll get some. Because you don't know what your enemy thinking if you don't find out from him. So I read anything. I read the Ku Klux Klan. I read the Moral Majority. I read what's the one that the guy got shot down off the airplane there, John Birch Society writings, and also read the Jehovah's Witness and the Mormons. I read everything. Because I don't know which one going to kill me in the morning. All of them look crazy to me. The what? The Ankh and the what? Oh, the dollar? Oh, the green side of the American dollar with the pyramids and the sun bus and the eye of Horus. Well, if you recall, the first president of the United States, a terrorist by the name of George Washington. Oh yeah. According to the British, you still go on England, you see it written there, George Washington had 30,000 pounds on his head for terrorism. I'm talking about the murderer, George Washington. The slave owner, George Washington. You see, isn't it strange that we see Hitler as a bad man? But you know, Hitler didn't enslave one black American. George Washington did. George Washington sold black folks the day of his inauguration from molasses to Barbados. But he's a good man. You see, you don't want to reason because that may, you say, he's the president of my father, he ain't father, no country of mine. He has nothing to do with fatherhood of me. He's a slave master. Every one of them in the cabinet was slave masters except Benjamin Franklin because he was a Quaker. And that's why he lost becoming the first president. But anyhow, Washington was a member of the Masonic group. And as such, when the first union was founded, it was founded and the Masons were the strongest force and allied themselves as a common unit within the founding group. It is so that they, in looking for symbols for their money, they took Masonic symbols, the Masons who had adopted it, the Freemasons who had adopted the 22 tablets they stole from Egypt, from the mystery system and carried to York, England, and established what they call York Rites with 22 degrees. Later, in Scotland, they added 11 more, call it the Scottish Rites. And the 11 degrees they call the Effable Rites, which put Christianity into Freemasonry where it has no business. And it is so that they decided to use those symbols, the pyramids or house of fire, the word in Greek means house of fire, the sunburst which symbolized the power and strength of God Ra, and the eye which symbolizes the Ujet, U-D-J-E-T, which is known as the ever-seen eye of Horus. That's the combination there. They did not stop there because in the Supreme Court, the so-called Department of Justice, they then adopted from the scene of justice with Goddess Ma'at. Goddess Ma'at is shown with a crown on her head and a feather of truth. And there is the heart symbolically of Annie the scribe. And in the other part of the scale is a feather, and his heart is symbolically weighed against the feather of truth. And there, Kepra is recording. Anubis is there ready to swat him if his heart isn't correct. That was adopted with a woman with the blind with the same sword. But you notice one thing about that. There was no intent to have justice. The scale isn't balanced. One part of the scale is up and the other is down. There was never intent. The artist did what was right, because you don't have a democracy. It said a republic. And you see, we don't read too well. There's nothing in the Constitution anywhere said democracy. It says a republic. One will rule and the other will be ruled. We could go and see other symbols adopted by the United States from your ancestry. And you say, well, how come they do all that and adopt all that from me and then enslave me? Easy. A thing called gunpowder and the cannon. In other words, I'm telling you, might is right. If the judge gives you 30 days in jail, would you go to jail voluntarily, just walk and go to jail? The only reason you go to jail is the man called a bailiff and another one called a marshal. And the marshal got a gun on his side, and there are umpteen marshals there with guns on their side. And the policemen in the hall waiting with guns on their side. So you decide, I'm going to jail. But take away those guns and you tell the judge to go to hell and walk right out. Might is the thing that make you go to jail, not right. And there's no such thing as justice when you're broke. If you were broke and you had a case, you're found guilty, you can't appeal when you're broke. Your lawyers can't buy the minutes of the trial when you're broke. So you can't get justice. When last did they hang or electrocuted a rich man? Son. You see, like Patty Hearst, they could get psychiatrists to disagree with psychiatrists who disagree with psychiatrists. They can buy justice. There's no justice for poor people. You gotta have money to guarantee justice. Let's say you were poor and you had shot, what's his name in the house there? Regamus. You wouldn't have been in no crazy house. You'd have been under the crazy house. But his daddy had money. Umpteen pounds of loot. Do you think that he didn't talk to the judge? You think that Patty Hearst didn't talk to the man who was going to free her? He said, even if she was found guilty, he was going to give her pardon. Talking about the peanut vendor man from Carterville. Justice. I know it's frustrating and you believe in all the beautiful things. I've been in the armed forces, I've been all over the place, and I haven't seen justice yet. I've seen just this. Yes.
Yes, somebody, what is the difference between a Mason that has been initiated, passed, raised, and a Mason to be called clandestine?
And the what side?
Clandestine. Clandestine Mason.
Clandestine?
Clandestine, too.
The jackass who said that the other one is clandestine is just as clandestine as the other one. You see what happened? What happened is that one man always believed that he got the right way. The fact is that either Mason is a clandestine, because the Mason in America got his garbage from England, and the English stole 22 tablets from Egypt and established what they call York rights. Who gave it to them? The Scots, I said before, added to that and called the Ethelbert rights. 11 were the Scottish rights. So when one man called another man a clandestine, what does he mean about it? He got his the same way the other one got it, by crookery. A thief can't call another one a thief with no sense of dignity. Unfortunately, is that we take the leftover from everybody and think we got something. How could you talk about a secret society marching in the middle of the street with top hat? You're not secret if you march into the middle of the street. Contradictions. How are you going to build a building with top hat? People are masons with a trowel and with mortar. But again, you see, Europeans do it, so it's got to be right. So we get into it too. How could you talk about the Grand Lodge of Luxor and then at the same time say that it comes from Solomon? If the Grand Lodge is in Luxor, Solomon ain't got nothing to do with it. Solomon is only 991 and 971 BC. The Grand Lodge of Karnak, the Grand Lodge of Saqqara, more than 3,000 years before the birth of Solomon. King Solomon has nothing to do with Freemasonry. Nothing, absolutely. It is a distortion of the works of the Africans along the Nile that early Hebrews did by putting Solomon into it. I suggest that they go to the Grand Lodge of Luxor, which the ruins are still there in a place called Luxor, and see for themselves the symbols, see for themselves the kind of aprons and the kind of vestment that the ancient Africans used in the mystery system. See for themselves the grand architect that they were talking about. See for themselves when Amenhotep redesigned the Grand Lodge and used the opium as the means of paying for this. There was no England, no Scotland, no Wales in existence in 4100 BC, when the first Grand Lodge was built at a place called Saqqara. S-A-K-H-A-R-A, which is now spelled also S-A-Q-Q-A-R-A. Imhotep designed the first temple. The man who was the multi-genius more than 2,000 years before Michelangelo gained that term. Go and take a copy of the Egyptian Book of the Dead and the Papyrus of Ani and look at the Masonic symbols in there and see if anybody today using that. And then see if they had any British top hat, white shirt, black tie, and cut away. As a matter of fact, that type of dress didn't exist yet. That's strictly European. In spite of the Charter House in England, the Charter House in France, and the Charter House in Italy. Nobody called themselves ancient, free and accepted, or ancient. How you going to call yourself ancient if you're back there? They didn't use the word ancient. So those who call themselves free and accepted, those who call themselves ancient, free and accepted, they're still imposters, both of them. Because no one over there carried them through. No one over there carried them naked. No one over there raised them from a dead level to a perpendicular. No one over there put a toe line and a cow toe on them. It was stolen, and it says that a man could not be raised from a dead level to a perpendicular unless he was raised in the Grand Lodge. So they're all imposters. You can't raise somebody in Alabama. You got to go to Egypt.
Yes, I understand from my evidence that in the past we have offered trips to Egypt, and I was wondering if there would be trips in the future and how can I get involved? Because it's really interesting.
It's my arrow. The secretary asked me to bring some brochures. And in my running out of the office, I had last Friday a new great-grandson, the fifth of my great-grandchildren, and he had landed for the first time last Friday, and I was rushing to the hospital to see the new arrival, and I forgot to take up the brochures and put in my bag. And then last night when I was getting ready to come, I again was rushing out to Long Island to spend some time with my new great-grand and forget to take up brochures. But the brochures couldn't be had. You could ask our sister here, the president of the government, student government, and she could get, my secretary would send as many as you need. Now, but I could tell you, there are 2 trips already completed. However, on the 6th of next month, there's a trip going to Egypt. That's 14 days. We're going the 6th and returning the 21st rather. There is another trip, but it's going to 3 countries. We're leaving on the 3rd of November and returning on the that's 19 days, the 22nd. That's going to Ethiopia, Sudan, and Egypt. And then there's a trip on the 23rd of December which goes to Egypt, Sudan, and Ethiopia and return in the 2nd week of January. There is a trip in July. It's already booked. You see, they got trips that comes in different ones at different times. And that's coming in the month of July. I can't remember, but the brochure for that is out. How these trips go, they're educational trips, you know, they're not just tourism. You have to listen to the 1-hour lectures on Egyptology wherever you see, but they're extremely cheap because they're educational thing, and they can be discounted if you're taking off your income tax. And some people come and get credit because they do independent study if they're not in the field of history or so forth. But it's only $14.50 or $15.50 for 2 weeks. You sleep in Class A hotels like the Hilton or the Hyatts. You get 2 meals per day each day, and some days 3. All fees, tips and everything to enter any of the temples or tombs, etc., are paid, including the tips. All transportation locally, because you have to fly in the Egypt airplane, are already in that fee. All travels by bus, because we travel bus, are included in the fee. The trip across the Nile River to the West Bank by the launch is paid for in that already. The flying down to Abu Simbel and so forth is included in that fee. Your round trip ticket from John F. Kennedy to Egypt and back, to Cairo and back, is included in that fee. 2 weeks. So that if you brought $1, you could bring back 99 cents. Now, if you did it by yourself, the round trip to Egypt alone from Kennedy is $1,100. You couldn't live in Egypt for 2 weeks, eat every day, live in the best hotels, go to all the temples, etc., and more for $350. No way. But because we do it as educational tour from a foundation, we're able to do it for a little better than what a round trip would have cost you by airplane. And we don't use charter flights. We use regular airlines such as TWA or Olympus Airline, British Airline, KLM, Aliyah, which is the Royal Jordania Airline, Air Morocco, which is the Moroccan airline, Pakistani Airline, which is called PIA, and so forth.
Okay, I was wondering, since Jesus, as they say, is white, the white people world, so as I see,
That's Michelangelo's description.
Okay, exactly. Well, is devil a real thing, or is it something?
Who?
The devil.
Oh, my cousin. Culture. Religion is the deification of a culture. And God is the highest concept one sees within his culture or her culture. Now the devil, in Egypt there is such a thing as a good God and a bad God. It is called the law of opposites. The Chinese and other people call it the yin and the yang. But the good God is no better than the bad God, because you need both things. You need good to know bad and bad to know good. So the law of opposites, you see, it is Judeo-Christian to consider that in this man is good if there wasn't something in him called the devil. Well, how the devil got in there? Who put the devil in there? They now say sex is the original sin. I'm not going to give it up, sin or not. But all right. Who made the devil? God. Right? Because they say the devil was a good angel in heaven, and he started to try to overplay God, and God kicked him out. Who made him? Just, you see, you got to break things down and analyze and ask yourself, these theories, not facts. Nobody have ever seen a devil. Nobody have ever seen a God. God didn't write a Bible. Man wrote a Bible and put God's name in it. If you have a Bible that God wrote, please let me see it, because I want to see it. Inspired men of God wrote the Bible. Aren't you inspired when you go to the bathroom? If you don't get an inspiration, you're going to pee all over yourself. You got to be inspired to go to the bathroom and get up from where you at when it's time to pee. You get an inspiration. Or you may get a perspiration. But you see, you are in college. And you must do some thinking. That's why you're in college, to examine anything. You must be inquisitive, and there should be nothing that you can't examine. Nothing. Remember that the Bible that most of us use is one written by under the auspices and control and authority of a man named James I, the King of England, who in 1611 authorized this to be published. But who wrote it? Who were the inspired men? Sir Francis Bacon and 47 other professors from Eton, University of Glasgow in Scotland, Eton University, Cambridge University, Harvard University, and I think one more. Those 47 men working for James rewrote the Gutenberg Bible, written under the control of Martin Luther, who had broken away from Rome in the Edict of Worms. The Gutenberg Bible was a copy of the Reims-Douai version that the Dicote don't walk in any kind of rain at all. Because the one that got the rabbit died, got a version. The other one got the real thing. So when you see the word, your Bible marked version, you ain't got the real thing. And they all mark version.
Good evening, Dr.
Yes, sir.
My question is twofold. And the first part of my question is, what is the original name of continent Africa? It is a name.
Africa was a colony, a little enclave, about the 4th century, when the Greeks would come to Lesbos, now called Libya, to kind of put their ear to hear what was coming out of Egypt, because they were barred from coming in mass. It was not until the Persians captured Egypt in 525 under Cambyses that the Greeks were allowed in any large number. That little colony that the Greeks call Africa later spread to now the entire continent. It started around the 4th dynasty. However, ancient people called the continent Corphy, C-O-R-P-H-Y-E, Ortegia, O-R-T-E-G-Y-A, Hesperia, H-E-S-P-E-R-I-A, Amonis, A-M-M-O-N-I-S, Libya, the whole continent, L-I-B, well, actually it was Lebus, L-E-B-U-S, and Ethiopia, E-T-H-I-O-P-I-A. However, the oldest documents that I have found by the Ethiopians themselves and the Moors, there is a name they call A-L-K-E-B-U-L-A-N, Alkebulan. And that's the oldest name that I know that the continent was ever called.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
So that's one of my questions is, can you go into details of the Holy Trinity and the Immaculate Conception?
Well, first of all, what is an Immaculate Conception? The ancients never spoke of the hymen, H-Y-M-E-N, a thin membrane, very sensitive because of the nerve endings, that lays on the track of the vaginal canal of a woman, the colloquial expression being cherry. When they spoke of virgin, it coming from the Greek word virgo, meant original. It didn't mean virginity. Thus, when they spoke of a virgin woman, it didn't necessarily mean a woman who had no sexual intercourse with a man. That is the interpretation which the 219 bishops at the Nicene Conference of Bishops put into their concept, their distortion of Immaculate Conception. The ancient Egyptians said that a woman was immaculately conceived when she became pregnant at any one time without confusion as to who she is pregnant for. That means that she isn't running with two men at the same time in the 1 month from one period to the next, and she become pregnant, then she immaculately conceived, honestly, sincerely, without fraud with the man. But he must be in the same condition as her. That pregnancy is an immaculate conception. It is the distortion of that. Origin, O-R-E-G-I-N, one of the bishops at the Conference of Nicaea, an African bishop, in 325 of the Christian era, AD, was the one that put forward the concept that Mary, Goddess Mary, be so canonized as Goddess Aset, which the Greeks call Isis. Listen to the prayer that the Roman Catholics still have. Holy Mary, Mother of God, blessed are the fruit of thy womb, Jesus. Listen to this. Holy and hail, Isis, mother of all and of God. Horus, true, perfect, and clean be thy womb. Do you see where the Mary thing come from? That's why I said they have to suppress the evidence of what happened at the Nicene Conference, because Mary was worshipped before Jesus was worshipped. They demoted Mary to worship her son. Don't forget that Jesus had an older brother by the name of James the Lesser, who became the bishop of Caliandros. And your Bible said Jesus and his brothers and sisters. Do some thinking. You see, you read what you want to read, and you listen to what you want to hear. Let me give you a puzzle.